The research station orbited a dying star in the outer reaches of charted space, and nobody expected visitors this far from the core worlds. Lieutenant Jake Morrison had been alone on the observation deck for 3 hours, running diagnostics on the gravitational sensors when the proximity alarm chirped softly, and he glanced at the display expecting another piece of space debris. But the signature was too controlled, too deliberate, and his pulse quickened as he realized something was approaching, with intent. The airlock cycled without authorization, and he reached for the emergency beacon but hesitated when the inner door slid open, revealing a figure that made his breath catch in his throat. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with skin that seemed to shimmer between deep violet and midnight blue depending on how the light caught it, and her eyes were too large, slightly luminous like twin moons in the darkness of her face, and she wore something that looked like liquid metal draped across her form, leaving little to imagination. Jake had seen plenty of alien species during his 5 years in the Exploration Corps, but none had ever looked at him the way she did now, with an intensity that seemed to strip away every defense he had built. Her lips parted, and when she spoke her voice resonated in frequencies that made his chest vibrate, and the translator in his ear rendered her words with unexpected clarity. "I have been watching you for many cycles, and your kind fascinates me." He should have called for backup, should have followed protocol, but something in her presence made all of that seem irrelevant, and he found himself responding before his training could kick in. "Why are you here? And how did you bypass our security?" Moved closer, and her movements were liquid, graceful in a way that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity, and she tilted her head, studying him like he was the most interesting specimen in the galaxy. "Your defenses are primitive compared to what my people possess, but I did not come to discuss technology." And she paused, her luminous eyes holding his. "I came because I am alone, and I sensed you were alone too." The station felt smaller, suddenly the walls closer, and Jake became acutely aware of how isolated they were from the rest of the crew who were sleeping in the habitat modules on the far side of the station. "I don't understand," and his voice came out rougher than intended. "What do you want from me?" She reached out one slender hand with too many joints and touched his chest lightly, and even through his uniform, he felt the heat of her skin burning hotter than any human. And when she spoke again, her voice dropped to something softer, more vulnerable. "My people do not form attachments the way yours do, and we are expected to remain solitary to focus on our purpose. But I have studied your species, and I have learned that humans need connection." And she moved even closer, until he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "I find that I need it too." Jake knew he should step back, knew this violated every regulation in the book, but he remained frozen as she continued. "Among my kind, showing vulnerability is forbidden, but your people embrace it, and you share your fears, your desires without shame, and I want to understand what that feels like." Her hand moved from his chest to his face, tracing the line of his jaw with fingers that trembled slightly, and he realized with surprise that she was nervous. "I have never done this before," she admitted, and her eyes met his with startling honesty. "I have never allowed anyone to see me as anything other than what I am supposed to be. But with you, I want to try." Something shifted in Jake's chest, and he found himself lifting his own hand to cover hers, and her skin was impossibly smooth warm, and she drew in a sharp breath at the contact. Why me? And he needed to know, needed to understand what had drawn her across the void to find him specifically. "Because you understand loneliness," she said simply, "and I have watched you through your transmissions, seen the way you look at the stars when you think no one is observing, and you carry the same weight. I do the burden of being apart from everything you know." She was right, and the recognition of it hit him harder than he expected, and he had volunteered for this posting to escape the memories of Earth, to put distance between himself and everything he had lost. But the isolation had only made the ache worse. "You should not be alone tonight," she whispered, "and neither should I." Before he could respond, she began to unfasten the metallic fabric that covered her, and it peeled away like liquid mercury, revealing skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the observation deck, and her form was similar enough to human to be recognizable, but different in ways that made his heart race with more than just attraction, with wonder at the strangeness and beauty of her. She entered without asking, whispered, "I Don't want to sleep alone tonight, and undressed slowly. Jake felt his resistance crumbling under the weight of his own loneliness and the raw honesty in her gaze, and he reached for her, drawing her closer, and she came willingly, pressing against him, with a sigh that sounded like relief. Her lips found his, and the kiss was strange, her mouth warmer than any human's her taste. Something exotic and alien, but not unpleasant. And she kissed him with a desperation that matched his own, as if they were both drowning and had found the only source of air in the universe. They sank to the floor of the observation deck, and above them, through the transparent dome, the dying star painted everything in shades of amber and crimson, and she moved over him with that same liquid grace, and he traced the contours of her alien body, learning the places that made her gasp, learning the sounds she made when he touched her just right. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, only two beings from different worlds, finding comfort in each other, and when they finally came together, it felt less like a violation of protocol and more like something inevitable, something that had been written in the stars long before either of them had been born. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat, and her voice was soft when she spoke again. My people would say I have compromised my mission, that I have allowed emotion to cloud my judgment, and what do you say? And Jake ran his fingers through her hair, which felt like silk threaded with starlight. I say that perhaps your people understand something mine have forgotten. And she lifted her head to look at him. That connection is not weakness, and vulnerability is not failure. He pulled her closer, and outside, the dying star continued its slow dance toward oblivion, and for the first time in years, Jake felt like maybe he wasn't so alone after all. She would leave before dawn, returning to her ship before the rest of the crew woke, but in this moment she was here, and that was enough. And as they drifted toward sleep wrapped in each other, Jake thought that maybe some protocols were worth breaking, and maybe some connections were worth the risk, no matter how impossible they seemed. The universe was vast and cold and unforgiving, but here in this small corner of it, two lonely souls had found warmth, and that was its own kind of miracle.